the R.M.Williams Outback podcast, bringing to life the characters that feature in Outback magazine and more.
Welcome back. Terry Cowley from Outback here. On this episode, I talk with the desert swimmer Brendan Cullen. Can you imagine training to swim across the English Channel in a murky farm dam? Brendan is so down to earth, but I think he must conceal a heart of steel. He's now doing great work in raising mental health awareness, particularly among men. Brendan is one of 20 great Australians featured in our 2026 publication of the same name. Get around it. My guest today is Broken Hill farmer Brendan Cullen. You may have heard of him as the Desert Swimmer. His recently released book of the same name tells the story of an Aussie bloke from the outback suffering from depression who challenges himself to swim the English Channel as a way of managing his mental health challenges. Brendan is one of 20 legends of the bush featured in our new issue of Great Australians magazine, a special publication we put out once every 2 years profiling some of the amazing people making huge differences in rural and regional Australia. For this edition, it's a fantastic picture of Brendan training in the farm dam that graces the cover. Great to have you on the podcast, Brendan. How do you feel about being featured in Great Australians and on the cover, no less?
It's such a privilege, and thanks very much for the introduction, Terry. It's extraordinary. I must admit, to be involved with the other 19 applicants and as storytellers and to be on the front cover is pretty special. I must admit.
Might just hold up a cover right here, and that is Brendan in his cap and goggles, and I don't know, but I'm thinking that's pretty cold in there, Brendan.
Yeah, it's not too bad. I think that's about 20 degrees, yeah.
Okay.
Number one dam, we call it, on Carve Station.
Yeah, you can't be too much of a wimp if you're going to jump in places like that, I don't think. Your story is written and photographed by one of our regular contributors, Andrew Hull. He creates such a wonderful image of you at the opening of the story. So I thought I might just read that for listeners if you don't mind.
No, go for it.
Wiry grey saltbush shrubs cast long shadows in the fading light as a trail of dust rises from a silver farm ute heading to the east, away from the station complex at Carve Station in Western New South Wales. The driver, station manager Brendan Cullen, stops to open a gate and casts his eye over the small mob of dorpers gathered at the nearby trough. But this trip is not to check on the stock. 2 gates later, the vehicle weaves through a clump of sheoak and mulga and tops the bank of an earthen ground tank replenished from recent rains. But this trip is not a water run. Switching off the engine, Brendan steps from the vehicle and after a few rough stretches and a good look around, strips off his work clothes down to the budgie smugglers beneath and swaps the akubra and sunglasses for a swimming cap and goggles. With another brief loosen up, Brendan walks to the water and in an easy freestyle swims a diagonal path across the square milky mirror of water, exclaiming exultantly to the kangaroos and cockatoos at the other end, "Oh yeah, that felt good," before putting his head down and swimming steadily back. That really takes us there with you in that dam, doesn't it?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And I've done plenty of those trips, Terry, swimming through summer months, winter months, trying to normalise conditions for the channel. Thankfully we had some good rains at certain periods of time through the training process, and I was able to use that dam quite regularly, in fact. If we had a late day, which wasn't uncommon, I'd take the Toyota there and I'd shine the lights into that number one dam and swim in the dark with the headlights of the motor car.
That is dedication.
Yeah, it's the sort of commitment that you needed to try and normalise and get the kilometres under your belt for the swim.
So you've trawled through the regions, dams, lakes and aquatic centres for hours and hours in preparation for your solo attempt at swimming the English Channel. I think you're quoted in the story saying about 40 to 50% of people who try actually make it. But I would be guessing that even among that group, there would be very few like you
Yes.
doing what you've had to do.
Yeah, I think you might be right. And I think that's where the story is a little bit different from most. But I think, being 600 kilometres from the nearest ocean and trying to get your head around how are you going to train for the channel, how are you going to, that you've got so many irons in the fire and it's such a juggling act just to try and get to water. But once you make the decision to do something like swim the channel, you have to make that commitment. So, I mean, over the 3 years leading into the channel swim, I clocked up probably about 60,000 kilometres just to drive to get to water. And it was tough going through that period because, it wasn't just the swim component. It was about actually getting to water, which was quite difficult. You just had to do it. Didn't have a lot of choice, really.
Well, maybe not when you made the commitment, but you certainly had a choice about making the commitment. What was it really that made you decide that you were going to do it?
It was an interesting one. I watched my brother swim an open water swim from Bondi to Bronte. It's a 2.5K open water swim. And that sparked my desire to have a crack at open water swimming. And really from that point on, I used to be a runner and, I'm only 60 kilometres from the local pool. So I decided that I'd start training in the pool so I could build up the Ks and if it meant that I needed to travel and go and catch up with my brother or other people, I was swim fit. And basically, it just rolled on from there. And I went down to Victoria and into Port Phillip Bay. I've got my brother-in-law down there, and there was a brochure on the wall at the Middle Brighton Bath saying English Channel swimming qualifier. There was an 8-hour, a 6-hour, and a 2-hour swim. And I was 88 kilos at the time, and I decided to jump in. So an English Channel qualifier, you have to swim for 6 hours and be in water that's 16 degrees and less. And I was never going to do that. But I just wanted to jump in and have a crack. And it was bloody cold, I must admit. But through that period, I met my coach and mentor, Mike Gregory. And basically from that point on, we had a number of discussions. And he said to me, mate, you should have a crack at swimming the English Channel. And I thought, it's just a ridiculous idea. When you're so far from the ocean and it just seems like a pipe dream. But I decided when I got home, I was walking around the kitchen table and I thought, you know what, why not give it a crack? And I rang him up and said, mate, let's have a go. And he said, righto, mate, you've opened up a can of worms. But and then from that point on, when I say we, Mike, myself and my family, my team, we sort of got together and we started a plan and it was about getting in the water. And I had a swim window in 2021 to have a crack at the channel. So I swam for 2 years ready to have a go and COVID hit and we were put back another 12 months. But, interestingly enough, making that decision to have a crack at the channel, I probably would never have made that decision, Terry, if it wasn't for, walking up into the Broken Hill Base Hospital in 2015 and being diagnosed with depression. That was a life-changing experience for me. I had to, flip my life on its head and, basically change things and everything that I did to be able to move forward. And I created a toolbox for myself and I learned to say yes when it was important. I learned to say no when it was important. And I learned to put myself first for a change, which I hadn't done for a long period of my life.
When you say putting yourself first, you mean taking better care of yourself, and part of that was getting fit?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I've always sort of been fit and it's part of who I am, Terry. I mean, I've run my whole life. I've played football, AFL my whole life, reasonably fit, work fit. But through a period of my life, through a long period of life, alcohol played a fair role in my life. And I was trying to juggle up being, the juggling act between being fit and consuming alcohol and, overworking and overreaching. And there was so many things going on in my life that I just hit a brick wall, and I got really crook. And, I had to change things. And one of those things was about, putting yourself first and taking care of yourself, because ultimately, if you don't do that, you can't take care of anyone else in your life, meaning your wife and your kids. So I had to do a complete 180, and I'm so thankful that I was able to take the first step and walk into the Broken Hill Base Hospital, because that diagnosis for me changed my life for the better.
It's great that you got the help that you needed. Isn't always the case, is it?
No, it's not. And it's very difficult when people perceive who you are, and, you put this facade up, and a constant facade. So from, the general public, for example, look at you and think, you're traveling okay, but internally I wasn't, and it was quite tough. It's very hard to self-diagnose, Terry. I mean, we're such resilient people, but we push ourselves to the point where it goes beyond that, and then we don't know where to look to get help. And in my case, I actually didn't know where to look. The only place I figured it was the best spot to go was into the hospital. But you have services all around you. But it takes a lot of courage to put your hand up and take what I call taking the first step. But look, it takes on average about 8 years for people to put their hand up, say, look, I'm really struggling. That's a big stat, to be quite truthful. I was probably crook for a lot longer than that.
So you're now in a role of advocacy for rural mental health, particularly for men on farms and remote properties. You're an ambassador for Lifeline and a champion for the Royal Flying Doctor Service's We've Got Your Back initiative, which is a program that promotes face-to-face peer mental health and wellbeing support. Can you tell me a bit about your involvement with those things?
Yeah, look, I love helping people. I always say, anything with a heartbeat and a set of lungs, I love to look after. The We've Got Your Back initiative is a collaboration or partnership between Lifeline and the Royal Flying Doctors. It's a hell of a peer support program, because basically there's a number of champions within the program, and we work under this peer support banner. And I suppose we're a link between the services that exist in the area, meaning the RFDS, Lifeline, and any other services within our district. But we're a trusted ear, and people can call us if they're struggling, and whether it be men or women or young people, for that matter, it's up to us then to nurture those people into a safe space, and that's pretty much our role.
The We've Got Your Back program coordinator, Eliza Emlyn, said that it's your straightforward nature that makes you perfect for the role, and that you have shared your story, but what's unique is how you have changed your story, and that you've been able to change your story when parts of it are no longer working for you. So maybe let's talk about that story, Brendan. If we start with your early life, you were born to station life on Mount Westwood, north of Broken Hill, and your childhood was dominated by station work, station life and family.
It was. Born at Mount Westwood and loved my life as a little kid, running around in the paddocks and, mucking around my brother, and, we were pretty carefree. I think Mum pulled some sleepy lizards out of my sock drawer at one point when I was a young fella, and, we're just mischievous kids. But I went away to boarding school at the age of 7.
That is young.
Yeah, it's very young, and 2 boarding facilities in Broken Hill, and boarded with a number of people in Adelaide when I went to school there. So basically 10 years of my junior life before I left high school, and suffered childhood trauma, suffered abuse when I was young. That probably moulded me into the empath that I've become today, or that I naturally became through that period, fight or flight type thing. So being awareness, knowing what's going on around you, it's like a defense mechanism. I know a lot more about this now than what I did at the time. But anyway, got back home at the age of 16 and started working on the property. Ever since I went away to school, basically it was the same day that I wanted to go back home, and I hated it. I hated school life. So I got the opportunity at the age of 16. I can just remember that feeling of going home and starting work. So, yeah, the bush was for me, big time.
then you ran into issues with succession that so many families do. It can be such a tricky landscape, can't it?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, probably our default was the inability to be able to, talk through the process. And I spent myself, my wife, and our little kids, we spent nearly 7 years there, with the idea of that maybe there was a possibility to be able to succeed, go into the family business. But unfortunately, we weren't able to do that. And that was really, it all came down to communication. And in the end, we figured it was best for us to move away and start a new life for ourselves. And the irony was a property next door was looking for a manager, and I applied for the position and got the role. So I remember getting my first paycheck and I thought, my God, I've got money. And I thought, geez, how good is this? So that was the start of our new life.
But you're working very hard and drinking a bit and retreating into yourself. And then that road led to what you described earlier about going to the hospital, which as you said, takes a lot of courage. And you don't always get the help that you need in the health service either. So it is great that you did get the help. You were steered in the right direction, and you came out with an identifiable problem to work on, which probably suited your practical nature.
Yeah, well, I mean, I had to do a number of things. So I was put on antidepressants. I mean, that was one thing. But the other thing is that I really had to make a conscious effort to change my life. I mentioned earlier about overreaching. I used to set these unrealistic goals that I could never meet, even when you were going through the drought or droughts and whatnot. And I think that just spiraled out of control in my own head. And I had this inability to be able to get stuff out of my head. So I carted a lot of rubbish around with me. And I remember getting really crook in 2009 where a friend of mine took me to hospital and they gave me blood tests and whatnot. And as it turned out, I had no testosterone in my body. I was completely worn out. I spent the next 6 months injecting myself to try and get myself going again, and with testosterone, that is. Anyway, I got myself going, but I didn't change my habits. So it wasn't until 2015 that I was diagnosed. So I had to change a lot of things, and one of that was, consumption of alcohol. And, I always say, I love it, it loves me, and we have this bloody love-hate relationship. And, I'm not a teetotaler today, but I'm nothing like I used to be. So there was that. And I used to spend a lot of time, Terry, talking to myself and having these conversations, but verbalizing out loud. And that got a lot worse and a lot worse through the process prior to 2015, to a point where, I'd be sitting in a car doing a water run, for example, and I felt like there was someone sitting next to me, throwing barbs at me or questions at me, and I was answering. I was in a pretty ordinary headspace at the time. So that was a real problem. So I had to, strip everything back beyond being on antidepressants, become enormously vulnerable, kick my ego down the flat, and not the ego in a sense that I had an ego, but the very thing that stops you from actually moving forward and looking laterally. And I was able to do that, and I was able to start having these honest conversations with people about, mental health, what that looks like. And that made my life a lot easier, but it also opened up a can of worms in a sense that there were a lot of other people out there in the same situation. And for me, I felt, I didn't realize at the time, I thought it was just about me, but in reality there's a lot of other people going through similar situations. And I thought, I got to be able to do something about this. And I was offered, that role within the We've Got Your Back program and also the ambassadorship role. And I took it with both hands and ran with it. It's the best thing I've ever done.
There is real power in that vulnerability, though, isn't it? Letting people in and letting them know that they're not alone.
Massive. It's huge. And I think once you learn to be able to do that and bring people into your space, or be able to stand there and listen to someone without judgment, I think you'll find that, you create these most wonderful conversations, and people then really morph to you as a confidant, someone they can chat with. It's a relief. It's a relief for a lot of people. And I love doing it, Terry. I love seeing people anyone that's been doing it really tough and see them come out the other side.
Yeah, very rewarding, I'd imagine.
It is so rewarding. Yeah, and a lot of those people that get in touch with me now, whether it be in the bush or rural remote communities or wherever, I generally stay in touch with most of those people.
Now, you talked about having your interest in swimming peaked when your brother Lachlan did the Bondi to Bronte open water swim, one that I've done too. But let's be serious, that's 2.5 kilometres. That's just slightly different than swimming from England to France. When that happened to when you actually got your feet in the water for that first attempt, well, I don't think you did have a first attempt, did you? Your first attempt was successful on the channel?
Yeah, correct.
What was the time lag between those 2 points? And you did mention that COVID probably lengthened that out a bit.
Yeah, so the swim, like the training process was 3 years. That's a long time to be focused and understanding what your why is. For me, it was all about getting to the other side. It was really as simple as that.
Getting to the other side is always good.
Yeah, absolutely. But you've got to have a why, and that's the thing that motivates you to keep going. I've got this saying, training starts when you stop, meaning, when it's really difficult to get yourself out of bed, get moving at half 4 in the morning and just decide not to get up, that's when you get up. It's very easy to motivate yourself when you feel motivated.
That's the difference, I suppose, between people that can do something like what you've done and people who can't.
Yeah, but you need a lot of support around you too, Terry. It's certainly not a one-man band. I mean, yeah, you got to put the time and effort in, but my God, you need a lot of good people around you to actually make it happen. And luckily for me, I had a great support base around me.
You said you saw that sign down in Victoria somewhere about qualifiers for the English Channel, and that was sort of what made you decide that you were going to do it. It sounds like you never really dwelt too much on whether it was going to be a success or a failure, more that you were just going to do the best you could do and whatever that kind of looked like, and that you were going to learn and grow so much from that process even before you've actually put your feet in the water to do that.
Spot on, Terry. Spot on. For me, it was, ultimately you want to try and achieve that goal to get across the other side. But just making the decision to have a crack for me was the very thing that I probably wouldn't have done pre-2015. And I just thought, why not? Why not have a crack? And because if you've never done anything like this before, and it's so far out removed from, my daily life. I mean,
that's the beauty of it in some ways, though, isn't it?
Absolutely, absolutely. But once you commit to something, it's right. All hands on deck, and let's try and make this happen. Yeah,
or not hands on deck, feet in water, perhaps in your case. So you did it 17 hours. So it's between 33 and 34 kilometres. So just slightly more than that Bondi to Bronte swim, just slightly.
Yeah.
Then you did it again in a relay team.
Mm.
Then you're part of an ultra marathon.
Yeah. Funnily enough, in 2022, I said to my coach, I'm never doing that again. I'm never going to go back and swim the channel. And 6 months later, I get this phone call. It was earlier than that. And they said, my team member said, mate, you want to have a crack as a team? I said, yeah, righto. So I went back there and that was quite extraordinary.
How far did you swim in that team?
I had 3 goes and each person had to swim an hour. And we did it in a bit over 13 hours, which was great. It was wonderful because I was able to watch my teammates get in there and cheer them on. Yeah, and I was able to actually see what was going on in the channel because when you're doing a solo swim, you can't see a thing, really.
Well, I was going to ask you to tell me a little bit more about that experience. I mean, I think you said there's about 2,000 people that have done it. So we have heard from people in the past about what it was like, but I would imagine every swim is different. What was it like for you?
My coach said to me, Mike Gregory, he said to me, just keep swimming until you hit something, meaning, till you run into France. I put my feet in the water and basically started swimming and the water was cold. It was about 18, so I wasn't freezing.
Did you have a wetsuit on?
No, the CSO rules, Channel Swimming Association, says that, for your swim to be ratified, basically budgies and goggles and a swim cap.
You see people putting on that, I don't know, that white cream or fat or whatever it is. Did you use anything like that?
Vaseline for me.
Okay.
There is special channel grease. I did have some, actually. I had some for 2 years. I saved it for the swim and I got it taken away from me at customs.
Oh, gosh.
And I remember talking to Mike, my coach, and said to Mike, "Oh, I'm in strife. I haven't got my channel grease." He said, "That's all right, mate. Plenty of Vaseline in the UK, mate."
Good old Vaseline.
Yeah, and you just get lathered up under the arms, behind your neck, in between your legs.
Stop that chafing, yep.
Same as sunscreen, plenty of sunscreen. And yeah, that's your war chest.
Are you allowed to stop at all?
You can stop as long as you want, but because you're stopping so many times for feeding. So basically how it worked for me is we're on the boat. I'd adjust my goggles, jump in the water, swim to Shakespeare's Beach, which was about 300 metres away, stand on the beach, become completely exposed, get out of the water, and so I'm right to go. And they blow a siren, and that's when your swims start. And you basically start swimming towards the boat. And then when you get to the boat, I was hugging the port side of the boat. So swimming next to the boat. I'm not allowed to touch the boat. And my crew's standing there looking after me, and they're counting my strokes. They're making sure I feel okay. And I just swim and just kept swimming. And then I got fed at the first hour mark. But
you have to stay in the water?
Absolutely, yeah. You're not allowed to touch the boat. You're not allowed to put your hands on the boat, rest your hands on the boat. Otherwise, there's a CSA observer on the boat. So if you do anything like that intentionally, you'll probably get rubbed out for your swim. So you get fed on a lanyard. So they throw a lanyard into the water, with a sports bottle, and you drink, whatever it is, flat Coke or Staminade or ginger tea with honey, and you just load it up with carbohydrates and you keep swimming. And basically every half an hour you get fed so you don't become energy depleted. You just keep rolling those arms over.
You must have consumed a fair bit of seawater though.
Probably consumed a bit, not a lot. I didn't get crook. I thought that there was a possibility I could, and if I took too much seawater in, but no, I was pretty good like that. I mean, my stroke rate didn't change from the time I started to the time I finished. It was nowhere near as effective as what it was, at the back end of the swim. But we got 2/3 of the way through the swim, and just before dark, and I looked up and I could see France. I thought, my God, it's the first time I've seen land, and I hadn't spoken to anyone. But I was just so focused to try and get there. Anyway, I put my head up a couple of times and he just said, "Mate, put your bloody head down." He actually said something else, but I won't repeat that. So, we're 2/3 of the way through, and I thought, right, got to keep going. And I got stuck in what they call the Channel Swimmers Graveyard, which to me, I didn't have any idea what was happening, but basically the rip and the tides become so fast that they take you away from the shortest point of France. So I was getting sucked up to Belgium at one point, and the sun had gone down. So the next 5 hours I was swimming in the dark trying to hit France. So I actually had no idea how long I was in the water. All I know is that I was getting tired.
Are you in a cage or anything?
No cage.
Did you ever think about sharks or anything like that?
Yeah, all the time. Yeah, I thought about sharks, and I suppose for me, you're outside of your comfort zone. You're choosing to go in there. You do think about that stuff. But for me, I probably thought more about my stroke, what that was feeling like. Am I going to hit any bloody jellyfish?
The things you could control.
Exactly. Exactly. And just hope that something big doesn't come up and swim next to me,
And what about coming out of the water? I'm imagining you have to get up on land by yourself. You can't be assisted.
That was quite the thing, Terry. I tell this story and it does give me goosebumps every time I talk about it. But Mike, my coach, he jumped in behind me. You're allowed to accompany a swimmer, but you've got to swim behind them. And we're getting to the end point, although I didn't know how far I was away. they call out the last feed. It's a poignant moment in a swimmer's channel swimming life because it's the last feed before you hit land. And I thought that, there'd be a heap of lights in the French shores and all the rest of it. Bear in mind it's 2:30 in the morning, and I had no idea where I was going. And Mike jumped in behind me, and I was fatiguing. I wanted to get back to the boat to get another feed because I thought I'd been in the water longer than I needed to be since the previous feed. Anyway, kept swimming, and he said, just swim towards the light, mate, swim towards the light. And so I just started swimming towards the light. They were shining this big bull light towards the French shoreline. And I just remember reaching out to pull with my left hand, and my fingers dragged through the sands of France. I thought, my God, I've made it. I can't believe it. And then Mike said to me, stand up, mate, stand up. And I stood up, and I was in wastewater, and I must have been in wastewater for ages. So, but I could have stood up, 200 metres earlier. And he said, right, now get out, mate, get out. And I just walked out.
You weren't jelly-legged?
I was bloody cold. I know that. I probably, it's hard to remember. I mean, I was so fatigued. I had a crook groin, buggered shoulder, snot coming out my nose. I was cooked for the last 3 hours. And, Mike and I embraced, and, just all my emotions just poured out. And then I just had this light bulb moment. I've got to get some pebbles for my kids. So I took off, trying to find rocks on the sandiest beach in France at bloody 3 o'clock in the morning. And Mike's chasing me around, and he said, get back on the boat, mate. You've lost the plot.
Which is fair enough.
I had lost the plot. There's no doubt about that. But it was such an amazing experience. It was incredible.
I bet. You have another challenge coming up, I think. You're talking about maybe doing the Manhattan Island swim?
There's a possibility that may happen. There's got to be a bit of water to pass under the bridge. It's called the 20 Bridges, part of the World Triple Crown.
And how far is that?
I think it's 43, 44 kilometres. There's three. There's the English Channel, there's the Catalina Channel off the southern coast of California, and there's 20 bridges around Manhattan. I completed the Catalina Channel in 2025. So this is the last leg. But I injured my shoulder. It was pretty ordinary actually in the last swim, and it's not quite right yet. I'm still working on that. So a few things need to happen, and it's on the radar. We'll see what happens.
But you're still training?
A little bit. Yep. I swam 2 days ago, just doing various exercises and whatnot, but it's a slow process. I tore the muscles below my shoulder.
Almost like a repetitive strain injury type thing, or?
Yeah, I must have torn it in the Catalina swim. My last 3 hours in my swim was bloody painful. I got there, but not without some damage. That was an interesting swim in itself. A lot of big animals in that water, Terry.
Such as?
Oh, big sharks, and, it's very, very chompy sort of water over there. A lot of bioluminescence.
How long did it take you?
13 hours, a bit over 13.
It's technically a less challenging swim than the English Channel then.
Well, it's hard to say. It depends on the conditions. I mean, they're all tough in their own right. You can have this perception about how quick you want to be or how fast you want to do it, but at the end of the day, it also depends on what the ocean throws at you. So it doesn't matter how strong a swimmer you are. If you have this perception you should make it in 12 hours, if it comes up rough, you mightn't get there for 15, 16 hours. So they're all tough. They're all got their own elements to them.
So what does life look like now? What are you doing work-wise, and how are you faring in yourself? And are you still using swimming as, I don't know, it's almost like a self-medicating tool, isn't it?
Once you sink your teeth into swimming, it's a little bit like running. You need to do it, and if you're not, you do miss it. So once again, being injured, it's been a little bit frustrating because you know where you were and how far you've slipped back, and you know where you want to get. But at the same time, look, swimming has opened up my world to this open water swimming community, which is unbelievable. Such a positive community, and you can go anywhere, all over Australia, all over the world for that matter, and you resonate with each other, and you just love listening to each other's stories, and really positive community. So it's great outside of your own work environment because you've got something completely different to talk about. So that's worked really well for me.
And what is your work environment now?
Yeah, my work environment at the moment is I'm still managing a sheep and cattle station. In the future, I'll probably do something a little bit different, bit of keynote stuff, do a lot of work with the We've Got Your Back program, Lifeline. Yeah, do some bush work as a contractor, see what that looks like. I've got 3 kids and they're all adult kids and, I want to be able to go and see those kids whenever I feel I need to, and which is quite regularly, and spend some more time with, my family and not feel so restricted. Get the rubber on the road with the Desert Swimmer book. I think that's really important. I've been lucky enough to author a book. It's been one hell of an experience. So
yeah, congratulations on how well it's been received. We ran a competition in the current issue of Outback, I think, if not, maybe it was the previous one actually. And we asked people to say how many kilometres to cross the English Channel. So there was a lot of people writing in with all sorts of different answers. But of course, I think the general consensus is accepted between 33 and 34 kilometres. Would you agree?
Yeah, I'd agree. Although my swim, I covered 64
Really?
Ks because I got sucked out.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. There's a classic English Channel map where you're starting from Dover and you just get sucked around like this. And depending on, so 60 odd Ks I covered.
Oh, wow. No wonder you were delirious at the other end.
Yeah, absolutely.
You swum from England to France and back again practically.
Yeah, it's good to be naive, Terry. Mm.
Yeah. Sometimes it is good to not know what you're in for sure.
Yeah.
Yes, if somebody had told you you're going to swim 64 kilometres, you probably would have gone, what? No.
Yeah, absolutely.
That just about wraps it up. I guess maybe some advice for some people who might be in a similar situation that you have been in the past. For you, it worked to literally go into a hospital and say, I need help.
Yeah, if you can learn to become somewhat vulnerable and find the courage to take the first step and ask for help, you're going a long way to recovery. If you don't feel right within yourself for whatever reason, before you hit the wall, look for some help. And if you feel that help is not the help you're getting or not the right fit or not the right person, ask someone else until you find that right person, and you'll probably find that life will change for the better for you. I can almost guarantee you that. So take the courage to take the first step.
Well, all the best with that shoulder injury recovery, and I would really love to hear about you doing that Manhattan Island swim or something else. Something tells me you'll get there if you keep plugging away, because you've done it several times already and you obviously do enjoy a lot of it. So that's important too.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Terry. Hopefully in the next couple of years, we'll have a crack at getting it done. It takes a little while to be able to book a spot and train for it and all the rest of it. So it certainly won't be in the next couple of months, that's for sure. But look, I appreciate your time and thanks for having me on, mate.
Well, Manhattan Island's not going anywhere, is it?
No, it's not. And hopefully they keep it clean, It's pretty murky, that water over there.
Yes, that would be another one of the many challenges. And thank you so much for being in our Great Australians magazine. And, if anyone ever gives you a hard time, you just got to say, hey, mate, listen, I'm a great Australian. Come on, give me a break. Yeah. Can I go to the top of the queue, please? I'm a great Australian. Or say to your family, excuse me, are you a great Australian? No, I'm sure you can work it to your advantage somewhere.
Yeah. Look, mate, I honestly, Terry, I just feel so humbled by the fact that I've been stuck on that magazine and been able to tell my story. I seriously am extraordinarily humbled. And I'm very familiar with the Outback magazine. I've been reading it my whole life. I remember when it first came out.
Yes, we're talking about 28 years, and I have been on board for 20 of them. My gosh.
Well done.
Yes, and it is really nice to have these one-shot publications like Great Australians to really kind of hone in on one special section of our subject matter, in this case, profiles of really great people such as yourself. So if you want to read all about Brendan's story and you got that little teaser of the first paragraph that I read earlier, please do pick up a copy at your local newsagent, or you can get it from us, of course. But I will insert several plugs after we're finished speaking.
Thanks so much, Terry.
Thank you very much for your time and all the best for whatever you do in the future. We watch on with interest.
Thanks so much, mate.
Terry Cowley back again. I'm sure you would have enjoyed hearing from Brendan Cullen. Forgive me for all the swimming questions. As a former swimmer, I couldn't help myself. It even got me thinking about swimming the English Channel. I'm sure that won't last. You can find out more about the mental health program We've Got Your Back on the RFDS website. As always, if you need immediate mental health care, call Lifeline on 131114. You can order your copy of Great Australians at outbackmag.com.au or from good news agents. Grab a subscription to Outback while you're there. This podcast is produced and hosted by yours truly. Editor-in-Chief is Mark Muller. Marketing and design by Claire Das Nevis. Original theme music by Isaac May.